Hi, it's Tiffany Lorraine, the Resilient Mother, with another episode from the Resilient Mother podcast. Today, we'll be talking about resilient love, having self-love, and having love just as the center of your life and how that lets you be resilient in all that you do. My guest today is Liz, and Liz and I met when I did Mother Shape the Future Summit back in June of last year. Thanks for coming, Liz.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad to be here. So I'm Liz, and I am an alignment coach, and I specifically work with high achieving moms who are looking to do it all, to be able to, crush those business goals, crush their personal goals, and to not feel like they're having to sacrifice family time, sacrifice those precious parenting moments that they have along the way. And we do this through prioritized alignment. And so really being able to at the center of everything is always us. And so it's being able to fill our own cup and do what we need to do as human beings, as people, as ourselves, in order to ultimately crush the goals that we have for ourselves. And so that's a little bit about what I do. And I market a lot as the resilient mother. And for me, it's the aligned mama, and being able to be in those alignment spaces of crushing and doing all of the things and feeling great about it in the process.
Well, I can think of lots of moms who need exactly what you're doing, including myself. So sign me up. I think we're all today more in tune with seeking what's in alignment for us and having a full, beautiful life, and not just a separate work life and family life and having to sacrifice anything, but to be whole and to be fully present in everything that we do. So I think you're on a great mission with what you do. If you had to, how would you define the word resilience?
Yeah, so I think the word resilient is such an interesting one for me when I look at it. I think that a couple years ago, I would have definitely had a very different outlook on this. But after in 2020, I had my daughter. And when I had my daughter, she had a stroke. And it was an incredibly up and down roller coaster kind of time in my life. And going through that with her was so impactful for me. And, I could see the resilience in her. And also it was in those moments that resilience was born within myself. And I mean, I was somebody who was successful up to that point. I had earned my PH.D. Like, I worked as an occupational therapist, like breadwinner, was making six figures. Like, I had all the things, right? Bought the house, had the kids, had the husband, all of the parts. But in those moments I had that wake up call, that moment for me where I was like, resilience isn't always working hard. It's not always doing more and trying harder and being better, being more. And rather, it's a lot more of surrender, and not surrender from a place of weakness, but surrender from a place of allowing, and that it's really not weak to be that. And so I had moments there where I got to be vulnerable, where I thought I was, fighting in the fight and really, advocating for her and doing all of the things that I could do to get her to be better. But what I found in the end was when I just let it all go and I allowed, that suddenly the healing happened. And that was when things started to move in the direction that I wanted them to move. And me doing more and trying harder wasn't the answer. And so resilience to me in the past I would have said it means I'm strong and I'm working hard and I'm going after what I believe in and I'm trying really hard to reach my goals. And what my answer now is that it's a mix of being and doing at the same time. It's allowing a sense of being who we are and allowing that to come into what we do. Because ultimately, what is the point of doing all of the things if we aren't being ourselves and feeling great in the process? And so I really feel that resilience is about being able to tap into both being and doing at the same time.
It sounds like your resilience actually came from a place of love, which is perfect that we're talking about resilient love today, because it came from a place of loving your daughter. And I think for us as mothers, we find this difference in our lives and this resilience we didn't have before when we do become mothers, because it's not just about us anymore. And we have them counting on us to be an example and to be strong for them, but also to be whole. Like you were mentioning earlier, like we have to make sure we're filling our cup so that we have something to give and that we're not draining ourselves till we're empty. And that's not showing love to ourselves. And that's not being resilient. Resilient is making sure you're doing the things that allow you to have the energy to be present and to be there for the ones that you love.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the amount of love that you have when you have a child, it's not anything that you can, describe in words. It's this inner feeling. It's being able to tap into the inner feelings like throughout your entire body of knowing that you have that connection with them. And, I think a great example of this is for anybody who has more than one child, and how, you have one child and you know that like they are your whole life, you love them so much. You would do anything. But when you have a second or a third or a fourth or however many children you end up having, right, it doesn't take love away from the first. That it's like there's just this endless ability to have that love, but also the vulnerability that comes with that when you start to wear your heart in your sleeve. There's a little piece of your heart that's out there running around, and it's a little unprotected and it's a little scary as a mom, and there's so many different ways to listen in and to be able to be in tune with yourself in that process. And definitely resilience was definitely born from a place of love, a place of so much love that I had to stop trying so hard and realize that sometimes when we try so hard, that love isn't really love anymore. It becomes something different. It becomes a drive within us that we didn't know we had, which isn't a bad thing. But when we can love from a place of really truly allowing and being, it allows for so much love to come in. And so there's a little bit of reciprocal energy in that love where it's a little give and take. And when we open to allow, we realize that we're not the only ones that have to be in the love space. It's that we are able to receive openly from others as well.
So what I'm hearing from you is resilience before was like this push, 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 push. You just push through it, you get through it thing. And instead you're realizing, no, it's enjoying the journey. It's enjoying the love and the presence along the way. It's being vulnerable. I think this is the first time I've had someone talk about vulnerability being a part of resilience, but love is vulnerable. Love is being open, and it is reciprocal. It is give and take, even with ourselves and with others. And how would you say I think girls especially are lucky that we live in a day and age where there's more acceptance of different sizes and shapes of women, but we're also teaching them to really love themselves. How do you feel you're doing that as a parent? Because I feel part of resilient love is self-love, and we have to show them how to model that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, this is something that for sure for me over the years is something that I've worked on, thinking about different shapes, different sizes. I wasn't always the type of person who I am today. I definitely grew up with very low self-esteem. I definitely beat myself up over how I looked and who I was, and strived for perfectionism. And it led to, first a suicide attempt, and then later on an eating disorder. And very much came from a place of just darkness, a lot of darkness within, and being so incredibly unhappy with who I was as a person. Like, it wasn't really ever about the way that I looked or the things that I did. It was that I never felt good enough as a person on the inside. And when we don't create that feeling of good enough on the inside, it's going to show up in so many different ways on the outside. And so for me, it really came out in those self-sabotage, self-abuse kind of ways. However, it also comes out in the way that we talk to ourselves. And this isn't always out loud, but sometimes in our own mind, and our language patterns that we sometimes don't even realize that we have, but they're there. And in that, our children are picking up on it all the time. Everything that we are thinking and saying and doing, they're watching. And I think something that's important for moms to know is that we often were like, well, I don't say this stuff out loud, I just think it. But we have an energy about us, and our children can feel the ripple of our energy. And so the energy that we're putting out into the air is something that they are definitely picking up on. And so the awareness of that and the ability to say, okay, I recognize that I'm having an impact on them, just the way that I'm thinking and feeling right now, just on the frustration level, even if I'm not yelling, even if I'm not frustrated on the outside. If you feel it on the inside, know that it's impacting them. This doesn't mean we never feel frustrated. It doesn't mean we don't feel angry. We get to feel our feelings in all of those spaces, but it's talking to them. It's being vulnerable again, back to that vulnerability. It's expressing our feelings to them and letting them know that it's okay to feel the way we feel. Because when we can start to accept our own feelings for what they are and stop judging ourselves and hating ourselves for having these what we consider, bad feelings, or, feelings that we wish that we didn't have and we want to like push away, when we can stop judging ourselves and start to love ourselves fully for all of those different feelings that we have and allow the feelings to flow, it allows us to model that for our kids. Because the truth is, they're going to feel the same way, because it's human nature. It's normal. And we don't feel like it's normal because we feel alone in it, because normally we're not willing to express it, but the willingness to express and model and share is what our kids need.
And before our children can talk, they can feel our emotions when they're inside of us as women. They do feel everything. That's why it's so important for a mother to take care of herself. And I know I went to extra measures doing that during the pandemic and probably did more things for myself I need to start doing again, just because I wanted to make sure I was always in a calm and positive state for as much as I could be, despite all of the things going on in the world at that time. And what you're talking about too is like this emotional intelligence in a lot of ways. And kids have that first before they can verbalize anything. Yeah. And I think it's really important to distinguish that an emotion is the chemical reaction in our body to something. So that's going to happen. You're going to have anger. You're going to have frustration. It's going to happen. What the trick is, the feeling is the meaning you put on that emotion, what the judgment you put on it, or taking the time to step back and go, oh, okay, I'm feeling this. What am I going to do about it? And I've apologized to my kids before, because I'm human. I make mistakes. I'm trying to break generational patterns. I'm still working on me. The work's never done. I'm in therapy. I'm still doing the work. And so, but that allows this truth between us of knowing what the human experience is. I'm not going to be able to shelter them from everything. I'm going to have to let them fail. I'm going to have to let them know sometimes life is hard. Sometimes life sucks. Sometimes there are these negative feelings, and there are some things you can't push through. Like you said, sometimes you just have to allow things to happen and take it day by day. But no, it's going to get better. And just know how that you've had this low, when you have a high, you're going to know the difference and you're going to appreciate it. And that is the human experience. And you wouldn't know the difference if you didn't have the lows. You wouldn't understand the highs, and you wouldn't appreciate them for what they are. And so for us as parents, as much as we want to protect our children, there is a fine line with that, and there are boundaries, but there's also some things we need to let them experience for themselves, just so that they can build that resilience, and also so they can learn to love themselves and realize, oh, mommy made a mistake and she corrected it. I make mistakes and I can correct it. Not, it's the end of the world as we know it, and it's just never going to be the same, so.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think like that feeling of needing to be in like the pattern of perfectionism, it's important that our kids get to see our imperfections, and not only that they see them, but like you said, like we respond to the imperfections by, apologizing and by just expressing them. Sometimes it might not have even gotten to that point of where like maybe it's that you didn't react, right? Maybe it's that you were able to respond to the situation. And as a part of that response, so maybe, something happens, you feel frustrated and like you're ready to yell, and you're like, okay, how do I really want to handle this? Like, I don't really want to yell. And so you're able to bring yourself down and calm that feeling and respond, right? So maybe you respond in a way that you want, but it's still sharing that response with them and saying, I'm feeling very angry right now. I'm feeling angry because of X, Y, and Z. And like, this is where it's coming from, and getting them to understand the expression of the feeling. And that changes everything. So it's not that we have to suppress our feelings. We allow those feelings to flow, but we also like to get into a place. And I think about this in like the form of like energy alignment, and knowing that like, when I allow myself to get into the state of reaction versus responding, I end up putting a lot of energy into places that I don't really want to put energy into. And then my energy is drained for the things that I did want to put my energy into for the day. And so whenever I'm able to recognize that I'm, feeling this feeling, and I'm allowing the feeling to flow without getting into that reactionary state, it allows me to not only have my energy for the things I want it for, but also be able to express my feelings to my children in a way that then they can benefit from. Because I dream of the day where my kids are able to come up and say, I'm feeling X, Y, and Z because of X, Y, and Z. Like, how great is that? Because I know that back when I had such low self-esteem and I couldn't see outside of the darkness that I was in, had I been able to just have some tangible words for the way I was feeling, it would have changed a lot. But instead, I felt very alone. I felt like nobody else feels these feelings. I'm the only one. I'm all alone. Like, I hate who I am as a human. Like, I don't want to live like this anymore. And I felt those feelings very alone because I didn't really know what it was like to express feelings. I don't even have, you talk about emotional intelligence. I didn't really have emotional intelligence. Even now at this stage, I would say maybe I'm at like a 4 out of 10. Like, I could still expand that understanding of emotional intelligence because it's not something I really had modeled to me. And it's something that I have worked at expanding in the past 3 years since I started my journey after having my daughter.
And I think for me, relating to you and your experience, because we have similar experiences with eating disorders and those negative thoughts and suicide attempts. When I think about where I was in those moments, it's a lot of not knowing how to express what was going on.
Yeah.
But for me, it was suppressed. I was not allowed to express negative emotions. I was not allowed to have them. I was supposed to just kind of always put on a front and be whatever somebody needed me to be the talented, pretty, whatever I need you to be today. And that was like the survival almost. And it was unnerving because from day to day, I didn't know who I was because it changed who I needed to be in order to get through that day and be acceptable in the sight of the unit that I was in. And so I think it's really important. And I have really been experiencing this with someone going into preteen. Love my daughter, love you. But when she talks back to me or when she expresses negative things, I'm really trying to honor it because at least she's voicing it. I wasn't allowed to. I wasn't allowed to voice what I was feeling. I wasn't allowed to really have an opinion. Or if I did, it was like, you know. And so and then I have to realize it's a gift too, that she feels comfortable enough to give me those because she knows I will still love her even if she hands me what's going on for the day and it's not the most positive thing. And now I have another daughter, on the other hand, who is struggling to express things and has internalized a lot of things. And recently we've really had to do a new thing where we check in every day. So she has permission to, how did today go? Is there something that we need to talk about? But I didn't realize she needed that, which is very different from her sister. And so it's interesting how each child, you kind of have to adjust to what their needs are depending on their personality and depending on what they're exhibiting as a need for either self-love or self-expression, because that's how they're going to learn to be resilient within themselves, because they've got to have that intuition to know when something's aligned with them or not. Even if it's not what I want for them, they have to know what aligns for them. How's that line in Will Smith go? Like, if you have a dream, you go for it. You don't let anyone stop you, not even me. You know, we need to be those kind of parents that we just let them know that they're loved no matter what, that they will have our love. And if we put conditions on our love, unfortunately, that's going to pass on. And that's the other thing for me is I want to be a chain breaker. And it sounds like you too. I'm changing these patterns. I've taken the time to recognize them. I've seen the dire consequences of them. They end with me.
Yep. Absolutely. And I think that, you know, as I've gone on this journey and I've found more about myself and I've been able to identify, you know, who I want to be as a mom and wanting, what are these patterns that I do want to change. At the same time, I've been able to get this like bigger picture of this as well, in knowing that like I can see the chain from generation to generation and know that like I truly believe, in my case, and this is not a case for everybody, but a lot of what happened in my childhood wasn't intentional.
Right.
You know, I grew up in a somewhat difficult household with a lot of alcohol and a lot of codependency and stress and things related to that. However, none of it was necessarily intentional.
Right.
And so while I can look at that, I can see their patterns from their parents and know like, okay, but there were things there, right? And then it's like, but what were the patterns from their parents? And know, even though I'm going to break a certain cycle, I know that I'm probably creating another one. There's probably another one underneath this one that's there, and I can't see it. And so it's the willingness to be okay with the fact that we are trying to do better by our kids, but that we are probably also messing something up in the process, and being okay with that. And that's part of that vulnerability of being able to show the kids that it's love is not perfect. Like people talk about love, like love is so perfect and love is kind and love is all these things. And it's like, sometimes it's not always pretty, you know. Sometimes love comes out in different ways. Sometimes we think that we're showing love and expressing love and being in a state of love in a way that's positive, but might have some negative impacts. And it's okay to be imperfect in those moments. And this is why that open line of communication and expression is so important, because in that space, we're able to tell them, you know what? I don't actually know what I'm doing. Like, it's okay to be vulnerable and say, like, I'm doing my best to help you. I'm doing my best to be with you, you know, and express those approaches, because that is one thing in my cycle that I want to change, is that everything was very hush hush. It was, don't feel your feelings. And it was also, you know, it was keep everything together, like keep it all going, keep the ball rolling, make it look perfect. Right. And also it was being able to not understand that, like, I thought everybody around me had all the answers all the time.
Right?
I
Yes.
thought like life was perfect. I mean, honestly, I think about like health related things specifically, of like, I don't know, everything seems so easy with like health insurance and all of that. And then I got to be an adult and I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And it's like, oh, well, neither did anybody else growing up. And I'm like, why did I know that there were these stressors in life? Because what really happened was when I hit my 20s, I got blindsided by all these things that I thought were so easy for everybody else. And I
Right.
was like, how did I not know that this stuff is challenging? So I
Welcome to adulthood. Yeah.
that I didn't know what to do. And it's not about that. And so, like, I am committed to showing my kids that it's not about a struggle mindset. It's that everything is what we make it to be, right? There are solutions all around us. We get to choose which solution, which path we're going to go down, but it's not cupcakes and rainbows. There gets to be moments, there gets to be troubleshooting, there gets to be figure this out or that out. And it's okay to do that imperfectly. And like, that is what I want my kiddos to know, is that it was never perfect, and it's never going to be perfect. And also all of that is okay. And it's a powerful lesson for
Oh,
sure.
absolutely. Because sometimes you have to give tough love. You have to say no when your child wants to try across the street by themselves. That's love. Saying
Yeah.
no sometimes is tough, but it's what needs to be done. Other times it's necessary for protection and for boundaries. It has to be. And so love is this multifaceted, multicolored thing. It's not just one thing or one emotion or
Right.
one expectation. And I think that's the other thing growing up too, is kind of this, here's your path. If you do this path, you will be happy. They're like, no, there is no real path to follow. There is no formula to follow other than, come from a place of love. And if you come from a place of love, you really can't go wrong because your intentions were at least in the right place. And sometimes that means you have to let go of the outcome. You have to let go of the expectations. And I find that with kids a lot too, is like, I expect them to clean like me. Well, that's unrealistic. I've been cleaning for years. So, they still need to learn. I still have to hold them accountable and have them help. But to expect them to do something to the level that I do it, that's not realistic. And it's not really loving either, because then I'm expecting them to be an adult when they're a kid, and they are not adults. They are kids. They are learning, they're growing, their brain is still developing, and we have to be very aware of where they are in their development so that helps the conversation, the communication, and to have the right expectations on what they're doing. But still, you have no control over the outcome. They are individuals in the end. You could do your very best as a parent, and they're still going to make their choices in the end. But if you've allowed them to develop self-love and to know themselves, you at least know you handed them that.
Yeah. Having those tools, I mean, priceless isn't the right word, but it's priceless. It's something that is just going to be there forever, to have every little tool that, that you can give them. And, I think, like, talking before, we were saying, like you said, I don't think that there was any intentionality behind like the generational components of this, right? And I think this is a great example. My parents felt like they were doing all of these things for me and, shielding me from the struggle of the different things, right? And so like there is that side of it, and then it's like I can see that and I can see how that impacted me. And then it's like I'd really just rather them know the truth. I'd rather them know that it's not always going to feel easy, but that's a choice that I get to make. And we don't really know the outcome of that choice yet, right? I mean, my kids, I have a 3-year-old and an 8-year-old and a 9-year-old. So like, I don't know. Nobody knows yet for sure, right? But I do know that by loving myself more, I do know that by aligning my life, by being able to look at, what my dreams are for the future, what I really want my life to look like and feel like, and being able to align that with my values and the priorities that I have, and then taking all of that and building things like boundaries, being able to have boundaries that are set and honoring those boundaries, that impacts so much for me, and modeling that for them, becoming more in alignment with myself for them that's what matters most, because as I do that for me, I model what is possible for them.
And I love that, modeling what is possible. And that's why you do the work that you do, is you're helping moms do exactly that. And that's something we definitely want. And something I want to touch on, like part of our identity is our parents. And so learning to love our parents and love them for what they taught us, positive or negative, we know they did their best. I mean, I know I was very loved by my parents and they were just doing what they thought was best, but going deeper and getting to understand where they came from the generation before. And the generation before was really helpful for me, because then it opened my eyes to more of the truth of the story and the heart of the story and the intention of the story. And then that helps me form my identity and just kind of understand, okay, these are going to be my struggles. These are the things I want to keep. These are the things I don't want to keep. And that's kind of love too, is like we give them at least the options, and then they get to decide what they're going to keep and what they're not going to keep. And do you find that working with your mothers too, as you help them align and stuff, you give them these options and then they kind of have to figure out, what helps them stay in their source of love for them as they go and plan with you and schedule and figure out how their life can be best?
Yeah. And so, I mean, the signature program that I use when I'm working with most of the moms, and I mean, I have different things and different ways that I work with them. The signature program is called Path to the Aligned Soul. And the reason for that is that it isn't just one path. It is designing your path as you go. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a lot of self discovery and being able to identify like the questions that people generally don't know the answer to is, who are you really underneath all of the labels? If you're not a wife or a mom or a daughter or, a nurse or like whatever these labels are that we put on ourselves, if we've removed all the labels, who would we be underneath all of those? Who are we at our very core? And so that's a question that's usually very challenging for people to answer, because when you say like, well, like, who are you? You're like, well, I'm a nurse or I'm a mom. And it's like, no, like that's a role that you fulfill. That's something, that's a path that you've gone down in your life. But who were you at the start of that path? And so being able to go back and like discover those self pieces within. And then also it's, what do you really want?
Mm-hmm.
People just generally, we don't know the answer to that question, because usually we're scared. We're scared to really voice what we want, because it means things. It means that relationships might need to fall away. It means that we might need to relocate. It means that, we might need to quit our job and start something new. It usually means that there's some sort of change reaction that's going to come from it. And so very often we kind of know the things we want inside, but we don't really voice them fully. Or we feel like we're too much. We've been told that story that we're too much or we're not good enough. And so we're afraid to really voice what we want, because we're afraid that we won't get it. And then we're going to prove to ourselves that we're not enough. Or we're going to go after it and everyone's going to tell us that we're too much, depending on what our story is from the past, And so being able to carve out that path of who you truly are and what you really want in life, and being able to take the path from who you are to what you really want and design it in a way that's unique to you, is exactly what creates that ability to love yourself for who you are and how you're going to create that life for yourself.
It sounds so much like the self-compassion class that I took during COVID. And I got to the end of it and we did a shortened version of the whole program. But at the end, you're supposed to accept yourself fully and love yourself fully. And it was interesting for me because I couldn't, and I had to figure out why. And it comes back to that question, who are you? And the first time somebody really asked me that and wiped out mother, college student, daughter, all the roles. And went, no, who are you at your core? It was like, oh, because you have to know that before you can really fully embrace and love yourself for all that you are, flaws and all. And until you take the time to do that. And it's scary for some, especially if you've been go your whole life, or you're running from yourself and you don't even realize that's what you've been doing. The first time it can be a bit scary, but it's absolutely worth it, because only then can you really express what you want. And I just overheard this the other day. Oprah said the most successful people, the key is they know exactly what they want. Most of us don't know what we want, so then we don't go for it. So those are very two key things to being whole and really being aligned with yourself, is who you are and what do you want. Because then you have a roadmap, then you can place a strategy, then you can make a plan. But until then, you're just grabbing at straws, hoping that you land on something. Or you might have this like, I won't be happy till I'm married, or I won't be happy until I have this much money, or like something, some mark that you're trying to make. And that's not internal. And that's not, you get that. And then it's like, oh, now what? You can win a gold medal in the Olympics and then be like, oh, I did that. Now what?
And that's exactly it.
Yeah.
Fulfillment happens in the moment, for sure. And I mean, this is really that impactful piece for me, was like, I checked all the boxes I was supposed to check, right? I had bought the house, like I had the husband, I had the kids, I had the PhD. Like, what more could I possibly have wanted? You know, I had all of those things. And then when and then I got pregnant and I found out it was a girl, and I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna have a girl, like, because I already had 2 boys, and it was like, it was just everything, you know? And then when I found out she had the stroke, it was just like, what? Like, this isn't part of the plan. Like, let me flip the pages back in the book. Like, I don't think this is the plan I wrote for myself, you know? And it was that moment of like, like, I've done all of the things, I checked all the boxes, but happiness happens right now. And I had that moment where I realized, like, all of the things I was worried about during the pregnancy, right? Like, I was worried about money and the time off, and how were we going to pay for this, and what were we going to do with this, and what would we do for daycare? And it was like all of these logistical things that I was worried about. And then she had the stroke and nothing mattered. It didn't matter how the bills got paid. It didn't matter about the daycare stuff. Like, none of it mattered. And I had that realization of like the present moment mattering, and being able to like, I mean, it was a challenging time. She was life flighted an hour and a half, close to 2 hours away from our house. And so my boys were back at home, and I was at the hospital with her. And so it was like, not getting to see them for a month, for an entire month. And like, they would come to visit, but like, they were little, they were 5 and 6. So like, a NICU is not the place for them. And so, it was like, I didn't want them coming, and then I was yelling at them the whole time, but I didn't want to not see them. And so it brought all of this awareness of like, what kind of mom do I want to be in these moments where, I want to do what's best for my daughter, but I don't want my boys to feel left out. I don't want them to resent her. Like, and being able to like witness all of these things happening. This is where those moments, it was that moment for me, that awareness of like, happiness happens in the moment. Like, we get to choose happiness. It is a choice that we make every single day, just like we get to choose self-love. It doesn't mean that love is never like fully and complete. There's always going to be parts that you're going to, it's like saying that you're, always a happy person. Like, no, like, we get to feel all of our feelings, but we can choose to shift into happiness. We can choose to look around us and be happy for the things we have. And I feel like when we look at people who have lost everything, somebody who's homeless, right? Sometimes they will tell you how much happier they are in those moments. They don't have anything. They don't even have a house. But sometimes they have found happiness in those moments that they may not have even had before. And how is that possible? It's only possible when you've done a soul search like this, where you've really been able to find yourself, and you're not about toxic positivity, but you get into the space of true self-love, which means there's dark moments as well as light moments, and being able to be in that space with all of it, and allowing our children to see that is exactly what creates that next generation who gets to be more aware of the fact that it's not perfect. Because if we can just get out of that perfection mindset, it changes everything. And one other thing I really did want to mention too, when you talk about generations and like looking back, and I think this is so important, when we think about the generation we're around the same age, around the same generation. And so like looking at our parents' generation, and maybe just pre them, depending on the age gap, growing up in the time of like, let's say the 50s, right? And like the 50s definitely portrayed perfection. And so it's like, really it's the after effect of what our parents' generation had also experienced. They experienced a very similar thing, and really they did peel back some of the layers on it, but it wasn't enough, right? There were more layers there. And so it's like they did do that part, but we don't always know these things. It's hindsight's 2020, right? We look back and we're like, oh yeah, there were all of these layers. And so it's being able to see this, and really when I look at self-love and I look at love with others as well, look at a marriage. It's never perfect, right? It's not that it's perfect. It's the imperfections that make it what it is. It's the imperfections that create the space for love. And I think that that's something that's really important to remember, is that we're never going to totally love everything about ourselves, but we can recognize the things that we don't, and we can start to soothe and work on improving those areas. And that's really what gives us the result we desire.
We can pay attention to the thoughts and the stories that we're telling ourselves,
Yes.
and the ones that we're choosing to hold on to. But we can also be kind and self-compassion with ourselves and realize, hey, I'm human. I'm still learning. I'm still growing. And that's just part of the process. And that's self-love. And self-love gives us the power to do great things. If you feel like resilient love has helped you to do any one great thing in your life, what would you say that one thing was?
Be a better mom. Be a better mom. I mean, I thought I was being a good mom before, doing all of the things, having them involved in all the activities, and, do with them all the time. And it's not about the doing, it's about the being. And I finally had that realization of just being present with them and really like being alive with them is what I want to do, and that's what resilient love did for me. It allowed me to be present with my children, to enjoy the precious parenting moments, because it's a choice. It's easy to skip over the bedtime routine and be like, oh my gosh, it takes so much time and I'm tired, right? But when we can really immerse ourselves into that present moment, even if it just lasts 5 minutes, that's the thing that we remember one day.
So resilient love, in your words, is being present. Is who are you being in this moment? Who are you choosing to be? Are you choosing to be in alignment with yourself? And are you choosing to show self-love for yourself and the actions that you're taking? I think that really brings it all together. Thank you so much for coming on, Liz. Do you have anything coming up that you'd like to share, or where can people find you?
Yeah, I mean, I always have lots of things going on in lots of different avenues, but the thing that I really love to do is just get to meet with people a little bit one-on-one, and get to know the moms out there that are doing amazing things. And so I have provided a link that connects everybody to be able to come and meet with me. And so we can just get to know each other and talk a little bit about those questions of like, who are you? And what is it that you really want? And being able to peel back some of those layers to go after it. And so that's really what I would love to do, is just be able to connect with more moms out there and let them know, like, whatever you want, it's all possible. It's just one choice after another in the direction that you want to go.
So if you're looking for alignment, you've got Liz here. If you're looking for building your resilience after trauma, that's what I do. And so we've got 2 resources here for you moms. If you need us, reach out. We're happy to help or connect you with someone else that we know. We do know quite a few different people from the networking that we've done. And my mission is to eventually have a group that can be a place moms can go and find the resources that they need. And Liz is definitely a part of that network. And so thank you for being here. I love the message that we shared. I hope you enjoyed today. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you'd like to see more of what's coming up in the future easily, reach out to either of us for more info. And we'll see you next time. Okay, bye.